Welcome to the Teenage Mutant Fight Club podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Get ready for a thrilling journey into two wild tales from the world of flash fiction.
Awesome.
Forget your predictable heroes. We're diving into the stories of misunderstood genius and underdog outcasts who fight back against the world in unforgettable ways. You shared some fascinating material with us, and we're excited to unpack it all. Tonight, we're exploring stories that kind of flip familiar narratives on their heads, showing us power dynamics and personal struggles in completely new lights.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What's so fascinating about these stories is how they take these classic literary foundations and build on top of them and force us to really think about the underlying themes, but through a contemporary lens.
Okay, let's unpack this first flash fiction story.
Okay.
The Mind Uncaged. Now, you flagged something really interesting about this reimagining of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. It's not just your classic good versus evil, is it?
Not at all. What stands out immediately is the source of Jekyll's experiments. Here, it's rooted in his battle with bipolar disorder.
Right.
You know, the story makes it clear this isn't just about some inherent duality of man, but about a scientist trying to navigate and even control as the story puts it, the storms of his own mind.
Right, and the story really paints a picture of what Jekyll's going through.
Yeah.
This constant shift between soaring brilliance and suffocating blackness.
Right.
You can almost feel the weight of those whispers that he hears.
Yes.
Madman, unstable.
Yeah.
It reframes his motivations entirely.
Exactly. He's
Right.
not presented as this inherently evil figure dabbling in the occult.
Right.
Instead, he sees his experiment as a way to create a map of his own mind, not necessarily a cure.
Right.
It's about understanding this tumultuous landscape within himself.
And here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
The transformation into Hyde, it's not primarily physical in this version, is it?
It is.
Yeah.
It's a crucial one.
That's a big departure from the traditional story.
It is. The story emphasizes that for Hyde, the relentless chatter of the world fades and the crushing weight of despair is replaced by this raw, exhilarating focus. It's as if, the mental noise and the emotional lows are kind of stripped away.
Which leads to this incredible productivity, right?
Precise.
Hyde's unleashing genius, according to the story.
Yeah.
It's almost like the manic state is being weaponized in a way.
Precisely. And initially, society, which was so quick to label Jekyll as unstable, now lauds this change. They see the output, the brilliance, without understanding the cost or the underlying mechanisms at play. It's fascinating how society, so quick to judge Jekyll's internal struggles, readily embraces the output of Hyde without questioning its origin or ethical implications.
Right.
This speaks volumes about our cultural obsession with results, often at the expense of considering the process or the well-being of the individual.
And there's a definite cost, isn't there?
Absolutely.
The story mentions a hollow echo of joy and the burning away of empathy. So this Hyde becomes brilliant,
Yeah,
but also undeniably ruthless.
right.
It makes you wonder what true genius really entails.
This raises an important question about the nature of achievement
Yeah.
and what we're willing to sacrifice for it. If brilliance comes at the cost of our humanity, is it truly valuable?
Right.
The story certainly pushes us to consider that.
The story even poses this chilling thought, right? Hyde isn't a monster
Right.
in the traditional sense,
Right.
but a twisted form of freedom.
Freedom from societal expectations.
Right.
And perhaps more significantly, freedom from the constraints of his own mental state.
Yeah.
It's a really unsettling idea.
It is. It is. It speaks to the allure that even negative or destructive states can hold if they offer an escape from pain or perceived limitations.
Yeah.
What's fascinating here is the complexity it adds to the character. He's not just evil, he's seeking liberation in a deeply flawed way.
That's right.
But is it truly freedom? Or is it just a different kind of prison? One where empathy and connection are sacrificed.
Perhaps it's freedom from certain constraints that leads to a different, more dangerous set of limitations.
Right, and then you have that disturbing moment where Hyde administers this revolutionary treatment. That turns out to be calculated cruelty.
Mm-hmm.
His manic mind becomes a scalpel, cutting away guilt, compassion, a conscience.
Right.
The patient's scream is described as a chilling, triumphant sound.
Yeah.
That's a really visceral image.
It is, and it really highlights the danger of unchecked focus. especially when divorced from ethical considerations. The euphoria of the manic state in this context becomes a justification for inflicting harm. It suggests that when driven solely by this kind of intense, self-absorbed focus, the well-being of others can become completely irrelevant.
But the internal conflict isn't entirely gone, is it?
Right.
There's still that flicker of Jekyll screaming within Hyde's relentless euphoria.
Right.
It's like Ghost in the Machine.
Exactly. It underscores that these two aspects of his being are still connected, still in conflict, even as Hyde seems to be gaining dominance. The experiment, which began as a search for understanding, has now morphed into this terrifying quest for power.
And it all ends with that haunting question, doesn't it? Will Hyde, this monster of relentless ambition, completely consume Jekyll? Or will whatever remains of Jekyll finally be extinguished? The answer, or lack thereof, lies in that empty vial, which is such a potent symbol of a mind at war with itself, ultimately perhaps consuming itself. What resonated with you most about this portrayal of inner struggle?
Well, for me, it's the way the story humanizes Jekyll's struggle, while simultaneously showing the terrifying potential of unchecked mental states.
Yeah.
It avoids simplistic labels of good and evil and delves into the complex motivations and consequences of trying to control something as intricate as the human mind.
Now, moving from the internal landscape of the mind uncaged to the external forces shaping identity and driving revenge, let's explore our second flash fiction story, The Countess's Gambit. A really powerful reimagining of the Count of Monte Cristo. This time, Edmond Dantes is reborn as a transgender countess seeking revenge on a patriarchal society that imprisoned her for her true identity.
This is a fantastic example of taking a classic revenge narrative and infusing it with a contemporary lens, highlighting issues of identity and societal oppression. The transformation here is so much more than just a change of appearance.
Right.
This reimagining puts a powerful focus on gender identity, the deeply personal understanding and experience of one's own gender, and how societal structures often fail to recognize and respect diverse identities.
Absolutely. The story begins with Edmund's imprisonment. And it's not for the usual treason, but for daring to defy the rigid lines society drew to claim his identity as a woman. That immediately reframes the entire narrative, doesn't it?
It does. It positions Edmund's initial imprisonment as an act of injustice rooted in societal prejudice. Within those prison walls, the story tells us that Edmund perished, and the far more dangerous Countess of Monte Cristo was born. This rebirth is central to the entire story.
And those years of planning become this single purpose,
Yeah.
fueled by that initial injustice. Even the tools of her revenge are fascinating. Stolen gold and etiquette lessons. A sword veiled in silk, as the story so brilliantly puts it.
That metaphor of the sword veiled in silk is key. It speaks to her method of operation, using the very tools and expectations of the society that wronged her as instruments of its downfall.
Right.
It's about strategic manipulation rather than brute force.
And when she returns to Parisian society, the Countess is this phantom wrapped in diamonds. Completely captivating and mysterious. The irony is palpable. The very men who condemned her are now vying for her attention. Utterly blind to her true identity and motives, the ease with which Parisian society accepts the Countess, completely oblivious to her past, highlights a profound superficiality. It underscores how readily status and wealth can blind people to deeper truths. And past injustices, suggesting a societal emphasis on outward appearances over genuine understanding.
It highlights the superficiality and hypocrisy of that society. They are easily charmed by wealth and status, completely overlooking the deeper truths and the past injustices. Their blindness is their vulnerability.
Her methods of revenge are so clever, too. Not violent acts,
Right.
but whispered rumors, misplaced heirlooms, subtle manipulations that exploit the fragile reputations and flimsy foundations of the aristocracy.
Yeah.
Society itself becomes her chessboard.
Exactly. She understands the intricate web of social connections and the power of reputation in that world. By carefully manipulating these elements, she can orchestrate their downfalls from within, making their own internal weaknesses their undoing.
And the story emphasizes that her target's empires crumble, not through direct confrontation, but through their own exposed corruption.
Right.
It's like they planted the seeds of their own destruction, and the Countess simply cultivated them. They imprisoned a man, but unleashed a force of nature upon their own gilded cage. That's powerful imagery.
It really is. It suggests that by trying to suppress someone's true identity, society can inadvertently create an even more formidable force for change, or in this case, for revenge.
But the Countess isn't solely driven by vengeance, which adds another layer to her character.
Right.
She builds this haven for those living outside societal norms. recognizing kindred spirits like the seamstress with dangerously clever eyes and the young musician ostracized for his scandalous love.
This is crucial. It shows that her motivations extend beyond simple revenge. She's creating a community, offering support to others who have been marginalized and oppressed by the same societal structures she's fighting against. They see her not as a monster of vengeance, but as someone who weaponized the very rules she'd been broken by to create a better space for others.
And consider that powerful exchange with the magistrate.
Yeah.
His continued blindness to his own cruelty is just staggering.
Right.
But the Countess's response: "Everyone is a self-made creation, magistrate. You simply didn't have the courage or the brilliance to write your own story."
Wow.
Such a cutting indictment of his prejudice. You could almost feel him finally experiencing fear, not of physical harm, but as his own downfall.
That line is so resonant. It speaks to the power of self-determination and the failure of those who cling rigidly to societal norms and prejudices.
Yeah.
He thought he was defining others, but he ultimately limited himself. Her words strip away his authority and expose his own lack of vision.
The story concludes by saying the Countess doesn't need to destroy him. He destroyed himself by underestimating Edmund. She's playing this incredible game of transformation, reshaping society with irresistible, terrifying grace. What does this story tell you about the nature of power and identity?
It highlights that power isn't always about brute force. It can be found in wit, in understanding societal structures, and in the courage to embrace one's true identity. It also suggests that attempts to suppress identity ultimately fail and can even backfire spectacularly.
So as we conclude this journey into the mind uncaged and the Countess's Gambit, what stands out to you about these two flash fiction stories?
What strikes me is how both stories take these established narratives and use them to explore really relevant contemporary themes.
Yeah.
The Mind Uncaged gives us this nuanced look at mental health and the complexities of inner struggle, while the Countess's Gambit powerfully addresses issues of identity, oppression, and the power of reclaiming one's narrative. It's striking how both stories explore themes of transformation, albeit in vastly different contexts. In The Mind Uncaged, it's an internal, psychological transformation with destructive consequences. While in The Countess's Gambit, it's a transformation driven by societal injustice, ultimately used as a tool for empowerment and revenge. What does this contrast tell us about the different ways individuals respond to and challenge the constraints placed upon them?
In The Mind Uncaged, we see the terrifying potential of unchecked brilliance.
Yeah.
And that incredibly fine line between genius and destruction, when someone is grappling with profound inner turmoil.
And in The Countess's Gambit, we witness the sheer power of transformation and the strategic dismantling of injustice through wit, resilience, and a deep understanding of societal fault lines.
These flash fiction stories, though brief, certainly offer a lot to contemplate. Perhaps they leave you wondering about the masks we all wear, the battles we fight within ourselves, and the immense courage it takes to truly define your own story in the face of societal pressures. What new perspectives have these journeys sparked for you? Consider how these reimagined tales resonate with our own understanding of strength, vulnerability, and that ongoing fight for self-acceptance. Rate and follow the show for more captivating stories from the Teenage Mutant Fight Club podcast.